I was on the second floor swapping an old vent cover when the cabin started vibrating like a small quake, except it wasn't thunder. I looked out the window and my stomach dropped. A yellow backhoe was idling in my yard bucket, lifted, lining up with the corner my wife and I built first. And the sick part was, this somebody had decided it was totally fine to begin demolition while I was still inside. I sprinted down the stairs so fast I nearly missed the last step, burst through the front door, and hit the gravel in my work boots like I was charging a fire. Two guys in matching safety vests stood by the tree line, one with a clipboard, the other with a tablet, both wearing that bored expression people get when they're doing something cruel with a policy behind it. "You want to explain why there's heavy equipment aimed at my house?" I yelled loud enough to make the backhoe operator kill the throttle for half a second. Clipboard guy didn't flinch, just tilted his head like I was the inconvenience. "Preliminary demolition," he said, "calm as a weather report. Your structure is flagged for nonconformity under the updated development overlay." I blinked at him. "I'm not in your homeowners association." Tablet guy finally looked up and gave me the corporate smile. "According to the zoning update, you are now," he said like that made it normal. I heard the backhoe gears engage behind me again, metal on metal, slow and patient, like it had all day to ruin my life. I took one step toward the machine and pointed at the bucket. "That thing moves 1 inch closer, and we're not having a conversation anymore," I said, and I meant it. That's when the black SUV rolled up like it owned the mountain. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Brenda Whitmore, crisp windbreaker, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard of her own, of course. She walked across my yard like she'd personally financed the dirt. "Ryan Carter," she said, smiling wide, "let's not start with accusations. We're working hard to ensure a smooth transition for your inclusion in Cedar Hollow." Inclusion. I repeated because sometimes repeating an insane word is the only way to confirm you heard it right. "You brought a backhoe." She waved a hand. "Not the entire structure. Just the eastern outcrop," she said, pointing like she was choosing paint samples. "It encroaches on shared development space." "You were notified." I laughed once, short, sharp, not amused. "If I got a notice that someone planned to rip my house apart, do you honestly think I'd just ignore it?" Clipboard guy cleared his throat like he was reciting scripture. "Email, newsletter, certified letter," he said. "Consent is assumed in absence of objection." I actually stared at him. "Consent is assumed," I repeated slowly, "when you're trying to bulldoze a man's home." Behind me the front door opened again, and my son Caleb stepped onto the porch in Sock's phone already in his hand. "Dad, are you filming this?" he asked, voice small. "I am now," I said, and I didn't even look back. "Get everything." Brenda tilted her head like she was teaching a class. "You were offered a seat on the board," she said. "You declined, because I knew exactly what you'd pull the second I signed anything I shot back. People like you don't want neighbors. You want subjects." Her smile thinned, and she tapped her clipboard once like it was a gavel. "You have 72 hours to vacate the non-compliant section," she said, "or allow us to proceed. After that, you'll be considered in violation of the community charter." "The section is my cabin," I said. "Then perhaps you should have been more involved," she replied, sweet as poison. I took a breath and did the one thing she didn't expect. I pulled out the original deed I kept folded in a weathered envelope. I held it up like a mirror. "You ever read the land grant for this property?" I asked. Brenda's eyes flicked to it, then away like paper couldn't possibly matter when you're used to being obeyed. "That doesn't change the overlay," she said. "It predates your entire HOA," I said, voice low, steady. "Recorded, signed, filed. You want to challenge it in court, be my guest. But that backhoe takes 1 inch off this cabin, and you're explaining it to a judge." For the first time, Brenda hesitated just a hair. The guys with the vests suddenly became very interested in the gravel. "We'll reconvene," she said, shifting back into control mode. "But I urge you to think about cooperating." Then she turned, got back into her SUV, and left my yard like she'd done me a favor. Caleb came down the porch steps and stood beside me, phone still recording, face tight. "That was real," he said. "Oh, it's real," I muttered, and now we respond like it's real. We went inside, and for a minute the cabin was quiet, just the soft creak of wood and my own heartbeat refusing to calm down. I laid the deed on the kitchen table and stared at it like it was the last honest thing on earth. 15 minutes later, the power cut out. Not a flicker, not a storm, just off clean instant surgical. Caleb looked at the dead lights, then at me. Is that them? I didn't answer right away because I didn't want to scare him with the truth I already knew. I just grabbed a flashlight, clicked it on, and watched the beam cut across the room like we'd gone back in time. That night I cooked on a camping stove and pretended it was normal. I made it sound like an adventure, like we were camping indoors, because that's what you do when you're a parent and someone's trying to turn your home into a pressure cooker. But after he went to bed, I sat at the table in the dark and felt the weight of it. Not dramatic, not poetic, just heavy. The kind of heavy that makes you consider the quickest way to stop the bleeding. I caught myself thinking for one ugly minute, maybe I should just sign whatever they want. Sell, move, start over, make it quiet. Then I imagined Brenda walking past the next house with that same clipboard doing the same thing to someone who didn't have a deed in a kitchen drawer. And that thought snapped something back into place. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. The next morning, the retaliation got petty. A pile of mulch showed up dumped across my driveway. No receipt, no note, just a mound of bark like a childish warning. I smiled anyway because it wasn't subtle. It was confirmation. Then the HOA newsletter started arriving like spam with a logo, pages of vague emergency compliance language, obscure ordinances, and bold phrases meant to scare people into surrendering. A few neighbors stopped waving. One guy, Mark Dalton, who used to talk football with me, suddenly couldn't make eye contact. And then I saw why. Black dome cameras appeared overnight, mounted on poles nailed to signs positioned for safety, except none of them pointed at intersections or roads. They pointed at homes. Mine, Caleb's, Mrs. Klein's across the way. I walked up to two contractors, wiring one across from my driveway, and asked calm as I could, "Who ordered that?" The taller one shrugged. "Orders from Brenda," he said, like it explained gravity. I nodded, took photos, got video, and didn't argue. Because arguing with hired hands is pointless, documenting the overreach is not. That's when the betrayal went from annoying to personal. Mark Dalton showed up on my driveway one afternoon, hands shoved in his pockets, looking like he'd swallowed a rock. "Ryan," he started. "I didn't mean—" "You told her," I said quietly. His eyes dropped. "You told her about the deed?" I continued, voice steady, about the utility setup, about the weak spots in my timeline. "You fed her every soft spot I had, and now you're standing here hoping I don't raise your rent." His head snapped up. "Rent." I let that hang for half a beat. "Yeah," I said, because while Brenda's been busy playing Queen of Cedar Hollow, she forgot to check who owns the land under the HOA office. His face went pale, and it wasn't because he suddenly grew a conscience. It was because consequences had finally entered the chat. Here's the part Brenda didn't know years ago, when the neighborhood lines were redrawn. The association office ended up sitting on a sliver of property still tied to my original land grant. It was boring paperwork, the kind nobody reads until the day somebody tries to erase you with a zoning PDF. So I wrote a lease notice, very polite, very legal, very specific. 30 days to pay the updated rent under the lease clause, plus back payment, plus penalties. No theatrics, no threats, just math and signatures. When Brenda got served, she called me like I was the criminal. "You can't do this," she snapped through the phone. "This is retaliation." I laughed, soft, tired. "No, Brenda," I said. "This is ownership." The next HOA meeting wasn't in their office. It was in someone's garage, because their office was locked legally due to non-payment. I didn't have to shout. I didn't have to intimidate anyone. I just let the rules she loved so much do what they were designed to do. That's when she went nuclear. 2 days before the deadline, her SUV screamed up my drive like a missile. She stormed out, no smile this time, and jabbed a finger toward my porch. "You think you're amendment-proof?" she barked. "You think you're untouchable because you found a loophole?" Caleb stepped out beside me, phone recording jaw tight. I held up my hand to keep him back. "Brenda," I said, even tone, "you tried to demolish my cabin while I was inside it." She scoffed. "It was a compliance action. It was a backhoe," I said, "and now it's documented." She opened her mouth again, then stopped because a county vehicle rolled into view at the end of the drive. Not for me, for her. Turns out when you file enough evidence, photos, timestamps, recorded meetings, surveillance angles, copies of the charter property records, lease documents, people at the county start to notice a pattern, especially when that pattern has a name attached to it. Brenda's eyes flicked from the county worker to me, and for the first time the clipboard looked less like power and more like paper. She tried to speak, but it came out thin. "This is a misunderstanding." I didn't move. "No," I said. "This is accountability." The next morning I found an envelope on my porch. No stamp, no return address, just one word scrawled on the front in shaky ink. Confession. I opened it at the kitchen table with Caleb standing behind me silent. 5 pages handwritten, same slanted loops Brenda used on every fine notice she'd ever slapped on a door. She laid it all out: rigged board votes, rewritten meeting notes, shadow accounts, falsified reports to the county, pressuring a neighbor to spy, even forging signatures on documents that had no business existing. It wasn't an apology. It was a collapse. I didn't gloat. I didn't frame it. I took it straight to the county commissioner's office and handed it over without a speech. Within 36 hours, Brenda Whitmore was suspended from the HOA board. And the last time I saw her, she wasn't marching across my yard. She was climbing into that same SUV, eyes locked forward, clipboard nowhere in sight. Finally learning what it feels like when the rules turn around and look at you. Lesson: never let someone with a clipboard convince you your home isn't yours.